All right, today we're tackling a really complex and honestly pretty heavy topic, the Devadasi system from parts of southern India. It's a world where sacred devotion and systemic exploitation get tragically tangled up. And it all really boils down to one central and pretty profound question. So let's just start with the question that's at the absolute heart of all of this. What does it actually mean to be married to a god? And I'm not speaking metaphorically here. I mean, what does it mean to be literally bound in a lifelong marriage to a deity, a vow that's often made for you when you're just a child?
You know, the name itself gives us our first huge clue. Devadasi. It literally translates to God's female servant. Deva is for God, and Dasi is for a female servant. So right off the bat, the role is framed as one of religious servitude, a life dedicated to a divine being.
So you might be wondering, how does a girl even become a Devadasi? Well, it all starts as what's called a votive offering. Her own family dedicates her to a local deity or a temple. And this is the part that's really tough to wrap your head around. This often happens before she even hits puberty. This dedication, it's not just symbolic. It's formalized as a sacred marriage. The young girl is literally married off to the temple god. And this union has some serious, life-altering conditions. First, it's for life. This isn't a temporary service. And second, because she is now the bride of a god, she's forbidden from ever having a real human marriage.
So she's a servant of the deity. But what does that actually look like day to day? Well, this is where things get really complicated because there's this huge disturbing gap between the sacred arts she performs and the service she is required to provide. On the one hand, her life has this very public artistic and religious side. Inside the temple, she's trained in these beautiful sacred dances and all the ceremonies. She becomes this living vessel for religious tradition, kind of like a performer in God's court. But that public role clashes with a hidden and mandated reality. So while she's seen to be serving society in this holy way, the unspoken requirement of that service is that she has to become sexually available for the men of the upper caste. And that, right there, is the core of this system's exploitation.
Now, this sexual availability isn't just random. It's systemic. It's built right in. And it leads to this next concept, this idea of her being the wife of the town, which means she belongs not to one person, but to the entire community. So how on earth do they justify this? Well, the logic they use is that because she belongs to a god, she's considered too sacred, too holy, to belong to just a single mortal man. Her divine marriage prevents a human one. And if you follow that logic to its next step, if she can't belong to one man, then who does she belong to? Well, the system has an answer for that. She is the property of the divinity who then, and get this, benevolently concedes her to the whole community. It's a way of framing communal ownership as some kind of generous religious act.
And nothing, I mean nothing, summarizes this more powerfully than a local saying. A Devadasi is servant of God, but wife of the whole town. It's just a chillingly direct description of this whole duality.
Okay, this all begs a huge question, right? How can a system like this possibly continue to exist, especially in more rural areas? Well, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is propped up by a very powerful system of control, with a few key forces at play. Think of it like a bunch of pillars holding up this whole rotten structure. You've got a deeply rooted caste hierarchy, you've got patriarchal social norms, the worship of specific deities like the goddess Yalama is also a key part. And who holds it all together? The people with the power. The priests and the powerful local landlords known as zamindars.
And here it is. This is the ultimate justification that holds the entire system together. The service a Devadasi is forced to provide to these powerful men is explicitly considered to be equal to her service to God. They've literally reframed sexual exploitation as a sacred duty. It's just unbelievable.
This brings us to the final, and maybe the most tragic aspect of a Devadasi's life. The vow that was made on her behalf is absolutely inescapable.
That commitment, made when she was a little girl who couldn't possibly understand it, it's not a phase, it's not a tour of duty. The dedication to the service of the temple deity is for life. Let's just sit with that for a second. The source material is completely blunt about this. There is no escape for her, period. The whole system is designed to be a one-way street. And why is there no escape?
Because even if she could physically get away, the social structure that created her role would then completely reject her. She has no other identity. Society simply would not accept a former Devadasi, leaving her totally ostracized, with nowhere to go and no options.
Ultimately, the Devadasi system wraps a life of exploitation in the language of tradition and divine service. And that forces us to confront a really difficult question. When tradition is used to justify suffering, who has the power and, maybe more importantly, the responsibility to redefine it?